The first light of morning stretched across the glassy exterior of Joinstock's headquarters, casting long, stretching shadows. James Thomas walked briskly through the lobby, his mind teeming with plans and strategies. The past few days had shifted the very foundation of everything he had worked for, and now, with a renewed vigor, he was determined to unravel the conspiracy that threatened his company's future. As he stepped into the elevator, his phone buzzed with a message from Ashley. Ready when you are. Let's do this. A faint smile touched James's lips. The prospect of working alongside his daughter, who had become such an unexpected ally, filled him with a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in years. The elevator doors opened, revealing Joseph Sullivan standing in the hallway. His face was set with concern, his body language tense. James Joseph greeted, falling into step beside him. We need to talk about the shareholders' meeting. There are rumors circulating, and several key investors are getting anxious. James nodded, his expression betraying nothing. I'm aware of the situation, Joseph. In fact, I've been conducting my own investigation. Let's head to my office. There are some things we need to go over. As they walked into the expansive corner office, James observed Joseph's furtive glances, his eyes scanning the room, as if searching for unseen dangers. It was a subtle gesture, but one that James would not have missed for the world. Take a seat, Joseph James Thomas said, motioning toward the chairs across from his desk. We've known each other for a long time, haven't we? Joseph hesitated for a moment, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his face. Of course, we built Joinstock together. James, you know I've always had the company's best interests in mind. James leaned back in his chair, his eyes narrowing as he studied his old friend's face. That's what I thought too, which is why I'm struggling to reconcile that with what I've uncovered about your recent actions. Joseph's complexion paled slightly, but he kept his composure. I'm not sure what you're talking about, James. If this is about the restructuring plans we discussed, I assure you. This isn't about restructuring, James interjected sharply, his voice unwavering. This is about secret dealings with global communications. This is about planning to sell off Joinstock, dismantling it piece by piece, and handing over our innovations to our largest competitor. Joseph's facade cracked. His eyes widened, a mix of disbelief and fear crossing his features. How did you? Who told you about that? James's gaze hardened as he replied, his voice cold and measured. It doesn't matter how I know. What matters is that I do know, Joseph. I know everything. Now the question is, what are you going to do about it? As they reached the unassuming conference room where Ashley was waiting, James Thomas hesitated for a moment, his hand resting on the doorknob. Joseph, what you're about to learn will alter everything. Are you prepared for that? Joseph met his gaze, a brief flicker of past loyalty visible in his eyes. I'm ready, James. Whatever it takes to make things right. James slowly opened the door, revealing Ashley sitting at the table. A wave of pride and anticipation swept over him as he watched her. Joseph James said, his voice heavy with emotion, I'd like you to meet Ashley, my daughter. Joseph's mouth went dry as his eyes flicked back and forth between James and Ashley, his shock evident. Your daughter? How? Ashley rose from her seat, offering a warm, steady handshake to Joseph. It's a long story, Mr. Sullivan, one we don't have the time to delve into right now. What matters is that I'm here to help, and we have a lot of work ahead of us. As the trio gathered around the conference table, James Thomas began outlining their next steps. Ashley would continue her clinical rotations at the hospital, listening carefully for any conversations between board members or global communications representatives. Joseph would work from the inside, feeding them valuable information and setting up meetings where they could capture crucial details. This won't be easy, James warned, his gaze shifting between Ashley and Joseph, both of whom were now integral to the plan. What we're doing is risky. If global or the compromised board members catch wind of what we're up to, the fallout could be severe. Ashley placed her hand gently on her father's, her voice steady with resolve. We know the risks, Dad. But this goes beyond tech vision now. It's about doing what's right, protecting innovations that have the potential to change the world. Joseph nodded, a determined expression settling on his face. I made a terrible mistake, James. Let me help set things right. As they continued fine-tuning their strategy, anticipating every possible obstacle, James felt a flicker of hope ignite within him. The path ahead would be tough, full of corporate deceit and personal revelations. But with Ashley and Joseph by his side, he felt prepared to confront whatever challenges lay ahead. As the evening sun began to dip below the horizon, casting a warm glow through the conference room windows, James Thomas and his team wrapped up their tense meeting. The weight of the task ahead hung heavy in the air. As they stood to leave, James pulled Ashley into a tight, heartfelt embrace. "Be careful," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. A mixture of fear and pride, born from being a father for the first time, resonated in his words. "If anything feels wrong, if you sense even the slightest hint of danger, you leave. Promise me that." Ashley nodded, pressing her face against his chest. "I promise, Dad. We're in this together now." After Ashley left to prepare for her next shift at the hospital, James turned to Joseph, his face hardening as he spoke. "You understand the gravity of what's at stake, don't you? This isn't just about saving joint stock. This is about protecting my daughter, about giving us a chance at the relationship we've been denied for so long." Joseph's expression softened, filled with a mix of regret and determination. "I understand, James. I won't fail you again. We'll get through this. Whatever it takes." As they went their separate ways, each preparing to play their part in the unfolding saga, James Thomas felt a powerful surge of purpose. The mystery of Ashley had been unraveled, but this was just the beginning of something far larger. With his daughter now by his side as a vital ally, and his longtime friend working to make amends, James was prepared to face the corporate world head-on. He would protect what was his and take on anyone who dared to threaten it. The stage was set. The players were aligned, and the next act in this high-stakes drama was about to unfold. James knew that the road ahead was fraught with danger, but he was resolved to emerge victorious, not just for joint stock, but for the future he now envisioned with the daughter he had only recently come to know. As he stepped out into the bustling Washington, D.C. evening, James's mind raced with strategies, countermeasures, and contingencies. The corporate world had no idea what was coming for them. With the combined strength of a father, a daughter, and a man seeking redemption, a force was about to be unleashed that could rock the very foundations of the business empire. The game had changed. The stakes had never been higher. But for the first time in years, James felt more than just urgency. He felt alive, deeply connected to a purpose greater than anything he had experienced. The battle to save joint stock and secure a future with Ashley had begun, and James Thomas was ready to fight with everything he had. The early morning light filtered through the sleek glass windows of joint stock's headquarters, casting long shadows across the polished floors. Ashley Thomas walked through the lobby, her heart pounding with a blend of excitement and trepidation. Today was the day she would set their plan into motion, stepping into the very heart of the conspiracy threatening her father's company. As she neared the reception desk, Ashley took a slow, deep breath, steadying herself. She had practiced this moment countless times with James and Joseph, but now that it was here, it still sent a ripple of nervous energy through her. "Good morning," she said, her voice calm and assured. "I have an appointment with Mr. Thomas." The receptionist, a young woman with a warm smile, quickly glanced at her screen. "Of course, Miss Thomas. Mr. Thomas is expecting you. Please take the elevator to the 50th floor. His assistant will meet you there." Ashley nodded, offering a polite smile in return, though her stomach fluttered with anticipation as she made her way to the elevator. As the doors closed behind her, she caught a fleeting glimpse of her reflection in the mirrored walls. The tailored business suit and perfectly styled hair made her appear older, more polished. For a moment, she barely recognized the woman staring back at her. The elevator chimed softly, and Ashley stepped off onto the executive floor. Emily, James's assistant, was waiting for her with a welcoming smile. "Ms. Thomas, welcome to Joint Stock," Emily greeted, extending her hand. "Mr. Thomas is wrapping up a call. Please follow me." As they walked through the bustling office, Ashley's eyes scanned the surroundings, taking in every detail. Several familiar faces passed by, their names appearing in the dossier James had shared with her board members and executives, some unknowingly entangled in the plot against Joint Stock. Emily guided Ashley to a small, quiet conference room and gestured for her to take a seat. "Mr. Thomas will be with you shortly. Can I get you anything while you wait? Coffee, water?" Ashley smiled politely, shaking her head. "No, thank you, I'm fine." Once Emily left, Ashley's composure shifted. She quickly rose, moving with purpose to the computer terminal in the corner of the room. From her purse, she retrieved a small USB drive, inserting it with steady hands. Her mind raced as she began copying files, financial documents, emails, anything that could expose the conspiracy she and James were working to dismantle. Her pulse quickened as she worked, acutely aware that being caught would not only derail their efforts but could also lead to severe legal consequences. But Ashley pushed the fear to the back of her mind, her focus unwavering on the task at hand. Just as the transfer neared completion, Ashley heard footsteps approaching. With a swift motion, she retrieved the USB drive and tucked it safely into her purse before returning to her seat, her face composed and calm. Moments later, the door swung open and James Thomas stepped into the room. "Miss Thomas," he said in a tone that carried for anyone who might be listening, "thank you for coming in today. I trust you had no trouble finding us." Ashley stood up, offering her hand to James, her grip firm. "Not at all, Mr. Thomas. I appreciate you taking the time to meet with me." As the door clicked shut, James's demeanor shifted, and his professional exterior softened. Without hesitation, he pulled Ashley into a swift, tight embrace. "Are you all right?" he whispered, his voice laced with concern. "Did you manage to get what we needed?" Ashley nodded, her voice a quiet murmur. "I believe so. But Dad, there's something else. On my way up, I overheard two men talking about a meeting tonight. It sounds like something major is about to happen." James's brow furrowed with growing concern. "Did you recognize them?" "One of them was Adam Boyd," Ashley replied. "The other I'm not entirely sure, but from their conversation it sounded like he was with Global Communications." James's jaw tightened, the weight of the moment settling in. This could be the final piece of the puzzle we've been waiting for. For the next hour, father and daughter engaged in the motions of a mock job interview, loudly discussing a fabricated position, carefully constructing their conversation for any potential listeners. But behind the surface-level chatter, in soft whispers and subtle gestures, they began to devise their next move. As Ashley stood up to leave, James glanced around the room, making sure no one was eavesdropping. He spoke with a tone designed to carry, "Well, Ms. Thomas, your qualifications are truly impressive. We will be in touch shortly regarding the position." Ashley gave him a polite smile, shaking his hand firmly. "Thank you for your time, Mr. Thomas. I look forward to hearing from you." As she walked back through the bustling office, Ashley could feel the weight of the USB drive nestled in her purse. It felt like a tangible weight, heavy with the potential to shift the balance of everything they had been working toward. Yet, despite the significance of what she carried, she knew their task was far from complete. The true challenge had only just begun. That evening, Ashley found herself back at Joint Stock's headquarters, now disguised in the plain attire of the cleaning staff. Her pulse quickened as she pushed her cart through the deserted hallways, heading straight for the executive conference room where a covert meeting was about to unfold. As she neared the room, she could make out muffled voices through the thick wooden door. Ashley positioned herself just outside, pretending to tend to her task, all the while straining to catch the conversation. "The shareholders' meeting is in 3 days," she heard Adam Boyd's voice, laced with urgency. "If we're going to make our move, it has to be then." A voice that was unfamiliar to Ashley responded, its tone icy and calculated. "Everything's set. By this time next week, Joinstock will be nothing more than a subsidiary of Global Communications. James Thomas will be on the streets, where he belongs. Ashley's stomach twisted, her heart racing as she absorbed their ruthless words. They spoke as though her father's legacy was nothing more than a business transaction. She inched closer, her breath caught in her throat, desperate to overhear the next crucial detail. "How about the other board members?" Adam Boyd asked, his voice tinged with a rare trace of uncertainty. "Some of them are still loyal to James." A cold, calculated chuckle came from the unfamiliar voice. "Leave that to me. By the time I'm finished, they'll be begging to hand over their shares. And if any of them refuse to comply, well, I have ways of making them see things our way." Ashley's hands trembled as she absorbed their chilling conversation. This wasn't just about a corporate takeover, it was a ruthless plan, one that would stop at nothing to secure their success. The lengths they were prepared to go to filled her with dread. Suddenly, the door to the conference room creaked open. Ashley's heart skipped a beat, panic rising as she quickly busied herself with her cleaning cart, her eyes cast downward in an effort to avoid detection. Adam Boyd stepped out first, followed by a tall, commanding figure Ashley had never seen before. As they walked past her, she caught a fleeting glimpse of the stranger's face. His sharp features were starkly cold, his eyes devoid of warmth, and his lips curled into a cruel, almost sinister smile. "Remember, Tanner," the man's voice rang out, firm and unyielding. "There's no turning back now. You're in this for the long haul, one way or another." Ashley's breath caught in her throat as the weight of the danger they faced became undeniable. She had to warn her father before it was too late. As the sound of footsteps receded, Ashley exhaled sharply, her breath shaky with the weight of what she had just overheard. Every second counted now. She needed to get this vital information to her father without delay. The danger had escalated, and time was slipping away. Her hands, trembling with urgency, reached for her phone. She quickly typed out a secure message to James, her fingers moving faster than her racing thoughts. "Meeting overheard. Global's plan is in motion. They're targeting the shareholders' meeting. Serious threats made. We need to act immediately." Ashley waited anxiously for a response, her mind whirling with the implications of what she had learned. The conspiracy was more extensive and sinister than they had ever imagined. Her phone buzzed, and she didn't hesitate to open the message. It was from James. "Get out of there. Meet at the safe house in 1 hour. Be cautious." Ashley's pulse quickened as she quickly made her way out of the building, the weight of her new reality pressing heavily on her chest. She had always dreamed of forging a relationship with her father, but never in her wildest fantasies had she imagined that their bond would be formed through corporate sabotage and high-stakes danger. As the cool night air hit her face, Ashley's fear was replaced by something else: resolve. This was her family now. She would stand by her father and do whatever was necessary to protect the future they were building together. The next 3 days would decide not only the fate of Joinstock, but also the future of Ashley's newfound relationship with James. As she stepped into the taxi, Ashley braced herself for the challenges ahead, her resolve hardening with each passing second. This was the final chapter of their high-stakes game, and she was committed to seeing it through, no matter what the cost. The taxi navigated the late-night streets of Washington, D.C., the skyline sparkling in the distance. As Ashley gazed out the window, the weight of their mission settled heavily in her chest. Somewhere in the city, unseen forces were aligning against James and everything he had fought for. But what they didn't understand was the power of a bond of a father and a daughter united, even after years of separation. Ashley's fingers brushed against her purse, where the USB drive lay, its contents holding the key to everything. They had the information, they had the will, and now they were racing against time. As the taxi pulled up to the safe house, Ashley exhaled slowly, gathering her strength. She was no longer just Ashley Thomas, a nursing student with hopes for a future. She was Ashley Thomas, a daughter fighting to protect the man who had only just become her father. And she would do whatever it took to safeguard their future. With a deep breath and renewed determination, Ashley stepped out of the taxi and walked toward the safe house. The final confrontation was on the horizon, and she was ready to face it head-on. Armed with the unwavering support of her newfound family and the drive to right the wrongs that threatened to unravel everything they had worked for, she knew this was the pivotal moment in her life. The pieces had fallen into place. The players were positioned and time was slipping away. Ashley Thomas was prepared to play her role in the most critical battle of her life, fully aware that the fate of joint stock and her bond with her father rested in the balance. The bustling atrium of joint stock's headquarters hummed with anticipation. Journalists, analysts, and onlookers crowded together for the impromptu press conference. For days, rumors had swirled about a significant announcement from the tech powerhouse, and the atmosphere was thick with speculation. James Thomas stood just behind the curtain, his heart racing as he reviewed his notes for the final time. The past 72 hours had been a whirlwind and exhausting, relentless effort to gather evidence, strategize, and prepare for this pivotal moment. He stole a glance to his left, where Ashley stood, her expression unwavering. "Are you ready for this?" James asked softly, reaching out to clasp his daughter's hand, the weight of the moment pressing in on them both. Ashley nodded, her eyes gleaming with a mix of anxiety and determination. "As ready as I'll ever be. Let's do this, Dad." On James's other side, Joseph Sullivan shifted uneasily, the burden of his past mistakes and his involvement in the conspiracy pressing heavily on him. "James," he murmured, his voice barely audible. "Are you certain about this? Once we step into the light, there's no going back." James's jaw tightened as he turned toward his old friend, his voice steady and resolute. "We're sure, Joseph. It's time to expose the truth. Are you with us?" Joseph drew in a deep breath, squaring his shoulders as if to lift the weight of everything he had carried. "I'm with you all the way." At 10 a.m., Emily, James's assistant, stepped onto the stage to introduce him. The low hum of conversation in the room faded as anticipation swelled. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the CEO and founder of Joint Stock, Mr. James Thomas." With commanding confidence, James strode onto the stage. His every step seemed to draw the room's collective gaze, the weight of countless eyes now focused on him. Camera flashes illuminated the space, and the soft hum of video equipment buzzed in the background. "Good morning," James began, his voice strong and unwavering. "I appreciate you all coming on such short notice. I've called this press conference to address some very serious matters regarding joint stock and the challenges that lie ahead." He paused for effect, allowing the gravity of his words to settle over the room. Silence blanketed the audience, every listener eager for his next statement. "For the last few weeks, I have been investigating a conspiracy within Joint Stock, a covert plan to betray our company, to sell our innovations and future to our largest competitor, Global Communications." A gasp rippled through the crowd, followed by a flurry of whispers and reporters scribbling furiously in their notebooks. James raised his hand, commanding silence. "I realize the severity of these claims, but I stand before you today with irrefutable evidence. Evidence that implicates not only members of Joint Stock's board, but also senior officials at Global Communications." He pointed to the large screen behind him, where a series of emails, financial records, and transcriptions of clandestine conversations began to flash across the screen. "What you're seeing here is just a fraction of the evidence we have gathered. It outlines secret meetings, undisclosed financial dealings, and efforts to manipulate Joint Stock's share price to facilitate a hostile takeover." As James Thomas continued to present the damning evidence, the atmosphere in the room shifted into chaos. The reporters clamored for answers, their voices overlapping in a frenzy of questions and demands for clarification. Industry analysts scrambled to take notes, their fingers dancing furiously across their tablets as they tried to process the explosive revelations. "Mr. Thomas," a reporter called out, cutting through the noise. "Are you claiming that members of your own board were involved in this conspiracy?" James's expression hardened as he met the reporter's gaze. "Yes, that is exactly what I'm saying," he replied, his voice unwavering. And let me make one thing perfectly clear, this is not just about corporate politics. The individuals behind this plot were prepared to go to great lengths, including using threats and intimidation, to achieve their aims. Another reporter rose from their seat. And what about global communications? How deeply does their involvement run? James paused for a moment, steadying himself before he answered. Our investigation has uncovered that this conspiracy stretches all the way to the top of global communications, he said, his tone resolute. We found evidence implicating their CEO, Jonathan Ryder, who has been personally orchestrating key elements of this hostile takeover. James Thomas continued to address the barrage of questions, his voice steady and commanding. Ashley watched from the sidelines, her heart swelling with pride and admiration. This was the moment they had worked tirelessly for, the pinnacle of their efforts to safeguard joint stock and reveal the truth. Out of nowhere, a disturbance at the back of the room drew Ashley's attention. She saw Adam Boyd pushing through the crowd, his face contorted with a mixture of fear and rage. Thomas, Adam shouted, his voice cutting through the air. You have no idea what you're doing. You're going to ruin everything. Security quickly moved to intercept Adam, but James raised his hand, signaling them to hold back. Let him speak, he said, his tone calm yet resolute. As Adam approached the front, James faced him directly. Mr. Boyd, would you care to add anything to the information I've presented today? Perhaps you'd like to clarify your role in this conspiracy. Adam's face drained of color as he grasped the full weight of James's knowledge. For a moment he seemed ready to deny everything, but then something inside him seemed to crack. This wasn't supposed to go this far, Adam confessed, his voice trembling. We thought we were acting in the company's best interest, but it spiraled out of control. Ryder's got connections, powerful people behind him. He made it clear that if we didn't cooperate, there'd be consequences. A collective gasp swept through the room. The reporters leaned forward, eager to capture every word, while cameras clicked relentlessly, immortalizing the dramatic moment. James's gaze softened ever so slightly as he addressed Adam. Thank you for your honesty, Mr. Boyd. It's not too late to make things right. Will you agree to provide a full statement to the authorities? Adam nodded, his shoulders drooping in what seemed to be relief. Yes, I'll tell them everything. As the security team escorted Adam out of the room, James turned back to the gathered press. What you've witnessed today is just the beginning. Joint Stock is committed to full transparency as we work to eradicate this corruption and restore the trust of our shareholders, employees, and the public. James Thomas paused, his gaze sweeping across the room. Let me make something clear, Joint Stock is more than just a company. It represents a vision for the future, a commitment to innovation capable of transforming the world. We will not allow the actions of a few corrupt individuals to derail that vision. As James continued to outline Joint Stock's ambitious plans for the future and their unwavering commitment to ethical business practices, Ashley felt a tap on her shoulder. She turned to find Joseph Sullivan standing behind her, his face pale but resolute. It's time, he whispered. Ashley nodded, drawing a deep breath to steady herself. This was the moment they had worked so tirelessly for, the final piece in their plan to expose the full extent of the conspiracy. James concluded his statement, gesturing toward the side of the stage. Before we open the floor to questions, there's someone else who needs to speak. Someone who has been integral in uncovering this conspiracy and bringing the truth to light. Ashley stepped forward, her heart racing but her steps resolute. As she approached the podium, she felt the weight of countless curious gazes from the press, wondering who this young woman was and what role she had played in the unfolding drama. James placed a reassuring hand on Ashley's shoulder, a silent gesture of pride and solidarity. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce Ashley Thomas, my daughter. A ripple of astonishment passed through the room, followed by an outburst of questions and exclamations. Ashley raised both hands, signaling for quiet, her voice calm and unwavering as she began to speak. Good morning, Ashley began. My name is Ashley Thomas, and until just a few weeks ago, I was a nursing student with no connection to joint stock or the corporate world, but a chance encounter at the hospital where I worked led me to uncover a plot that threatened not only this company but also the very values of progress and innovation it was built upon. As Ashley recounted her involvement in the investigation, detailing the risks she had taken and the evidence she had uncovered, the room was spellbound. She spoke of overheard conversations, secretive meetings in hospital rooms, and the moment she realized the true depth of the threat they were facing. I stand here today not just as James Thomas's daughter, but as someone who believes in the power of truth and the importance of doing what's right even when the cost is high. Ashley's final words rang out with a conviction that resonated through the room, leaving an undeniable impression on all who listened. As the press conference progressed, James Thomas and Ashley Thomas handled the barrage of questions with composure, revealing the full scope of joint stock's battle against corruption. The weight of the situation was becoming clear. Reporters pounded their laptops, typing furiously, while news anchors spoke in fast-paced sentences, delivering live updates to their networks. By the time the conference wrapped up, the tech world had irrevocably shifted. Joint Stock Exposed was trending across social media platforms, sparking heated debates about corporate ethics and the power of whistleblowers. The world had been thrown into a frenzy of discussion, and the truth could no longer be hidden. As they descended from the stage, James and Ashley were greeted by Joseph, who had been standing quietly in the wings, watching the unfolding drama. "You did it," Joseph said, his voice thick with awe and relief. "You really made it happen." James nodded, a look of pride and exhaustion on his face. Pulling both Ashley and Joseph into a firm embrace, he replied, "We did it, all of us together." In that moment, as they stood in the midst of the chaos left in their wake, Ashley felt an overwhelming sense of closure. What had begun as a mysterious tip in a hospital room had led them to this pivotal point. They had unveiled the truth. But even as the world watched, Ashley knew their journey was far from over. The fight for justice, for what was right, had only just begun. It all began in a hospital room, a place Emily could never have imagined would lead her to this pivotal moment. As she and her father, James Thomas, along with Joseph Sullivan, parted ways, fully aware that their work was far from complete, Emily's gaze drifted to a familiar face in the crowd. It was the man she had seen with Adam Boyd, the one with cold, calculating eyes and a smile that sent a chill through her. His gaze was fixed on them, a subtle yet unnerving expression on his face. It was clear to Emily that although they had won this battle, the war was far from over. The forces working against them were powerful, and their reach extended farther than they had anticipated. Emily felt the weight of the challenge they still faced, knowing that those who opposed them would not accept defeat so easily. Sensing her unease, James gently squeezed her hand. "Are you all right?" he asked softly, his voice filled with concern. Emily forced a smile, nodding. "I'm fine, Dad. Just processing it all." As they made their way through the crowd, managing to field congratulatory remarks and dodge the relentless questioning of reporters, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that they were teetering on the edge of something far larger than they had originally thought. The truth had been revealed, but at what price? What further trials awaited the newly united Thomas family and the company they had poured everything into protecting? When they finally stepped out into the bright sunlight of Washington, D.C., Emily knew one thing with certainty: whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The bond between father and daughter, forged through the fires of conspiracy and truth, had become unbreakable. It was stronger than any corporate threat or shadowy figure lurking in the background. The next chapter of their journey was about to begin, and Emily Thomas was prepared to meet it head-on. Armed with the truth, the unwavering love of her family, and a determination to see justice prevail, she was ready for whatever came next, no matter the cost.